Hey guys, so we need to talk about your workflow. I'm like, well, Ed, what do you mean by workflow? What are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about how do you get from point A to point B with whatever it is that you're trying to do, and what tools are you using to help get you there? So I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to show you some of the tools that I'm using and the way that I'm using them, and get into some things that you could possibly do to improve or maybe even change your workflow. All right, so let's cue the intro, and then we're going to get into it. Cue the intro. Alexa, open the studio.
At McRae Music.
Okay, so your workflow is extremely important, not only in the sense of the specific tools that you're using, which is not really as important as you might think. I'll talk about that in a sec, but especially in the sense of how you are progressing from idea to completion. How, I should say, are you using those tools to get done the things that you need to get done? Now, before I show you anything in regards to how I do stuff and what I'm doing to go from idea all the way through to finalized mastered product, let me just dispel the myth right now of industry standard. You'll hear often people ask, well, what is the best plugin package, or what is the best DAW to use? Or some people, well, this is the industry standard, and if you're not using this, then you're a hack, and you just might as well, you're not professional. Just go sit down somewhere. You shouldn't be charging anybody. And in times past, for example, Pro Tools really was the industry standard, right? If you were doing anything involving audio engineering, if you were mixing, if you were mastering, especially if you were tracking, right, you're using Pro Tools, or you're probably, not using much anything. There were maybe niche groups here and there that were using other stuff, but Pro Tools was it. Nowadays, that is just not the case anymore. You have Grammy and Billboard charting producers, audio engineers, and everyone who are producing and mixing and mastering on all kinds of different DAWs, because other DAWs have caught up to Pro Tools and are able to do the same things that Pro Tools can do if you learn how to work those DAWs. They might do them a little bit differently, but they're going to get the job done. Also, today, audio engineering and music production is much more accessible than it was 10, 15, and especially 20, 30 years ago, where it was really relegated to large commercial studios where you had machine rooms and, large analog consoles and all that kind of stuff. And those studios still have their place, especially for larger format recordings. The point is, the tools that you're using are more important in terms of what is comfortable for you. What is the best tool for you to use to do the things that you need to do? And that goes for DAWs, that goes for plugins, it even goes to hardware like microphones and stuff, which we're really not going to talk about today. So I want to show you my workflow. And with anything that I show you guys on this channel that I'm doing, it is not in any way to say that this is the way you have to do it and this is the gospel truth. And if you're not doing it this way, then, you're not doing anything. Not at all. My goal with this channel is to just kind of show you how I do things, show you some of the different conclusions that I have come to, and, hope that maybe you can glean some stuff off of what I'm doing that maybe you would like to do as well, or maybe you have some things that are, or ways that are better for you than what the way I'm doing stuff. It's perfectly fine, right? We're just sharing. We're all here learning together. All right. So let's talk about it. Let's go over here and take a look at some stuff. Okay, so the specific tools that you use are going to vary depending on what it is that you are doing in the creative process. Now, for me, at any given time, I could be doing anything from the inception of a song, writing, all the way through to the final completed mastering of the song, right? So, and everything in between. All right. So I need tools that are going to allow me to do all of those things when I need to do them. So most of the time, my process starts with this application that you see on screen right here. This is an application by Microsoft called OneNote. It is absolutely amazing. It's a virtual notebook program that you can use to keep all of your notes in here. And so this particular notebook has my songs in it. All right. And so I've got all these songs over here, and I've got all these different things over here. If I start going through, I got just a bunch of stuff, right? If you need a song, talk to me. I got some. I probably got something for you. I got a bunch of stuff over here, and so I really love OneNote. If you look right here, you see I have some audio notes in here. The beautiful thing about this is if you store your notebook in the cloud, right, ideally in Microsoft OneDrive, you can sync that notebook up across multiple devices. So I have OneNote installed on my phone. I also have it installed on my iPad. I can go on any computer anywhere and access it. And so I have audio notes here where I've had ideas, and I have my phone with me. I can pull it up, do a quick audio message in there. It goes right into here. And then you can see here, I can start writing my, whatever lyrics I want. Boom. So this is typically where my creative process is going to start. It's going to start in here in Microsoft OneNote, right? That's where my ideas are. All right, so then we need to flesh out those ideas and start getting into some pre-production, getting some music together and getting a feel for everything. And so that is going to progress us over here to this beast of an application, this beast of a DAW here, which is Logic Pro X. I love Logic Pro. I do all of my MIDI production in Logic, so that means all of my MIDI instruments, all of my pre-production, and just not even just pre-production, just all of the tracking I do in Logic. Now, there was a time when I used Logic Pro just for MIDI production, and I would use Pro Tools for all of my like tracking, if I was tracking vocals or if I was tracking like instruments. Pro Tools recently, I switched over from Pro Tools to Luna, card up in the top if you're interested in why I did that. But recently, over the past few weeks, I was out in Alabama doing a recording session, and I really kind of started digging using Logic for tracking. And I'll talk about some of the specific features and things of why I think I'm going to make the switch to use Logic for tracking in another video. I'm going to go over some of my favorite features in all the different DAWs I use. But right now, I'm making the adjustment to move to using Logic for tracking. There were just some really useful features in there that I really enjoyed. So right now in my workflow, I'm going to be using Logic Pro for all of my MIDI production and all of my tracking. So just all of my production needs tracking of vocals, pre-production and final vocals, most likely tracking of any instruments, or if I bring musicians in, whatever the case might be. I'm going to be using Logic for that. And let me pause there for a second. Just say, never be afraid to reevaluate your current workflow. Even if you're very comfortable with it, it's tools that you use. Never be afraid to reevaluate it and see if maybe there are different tools you could be using, or things that you could be doing, or ways you could be using that tool differently to make your workflow more efficient. Okay. So I've made that decision. So now that is the role that Logic Pro is going to play. Now, Logic can do everything. You can use Logic, and some of my best friends use Logic to do everything. I don't like using Logic for everything, right? MIDI production, yes. Tracking now, yes. Mixing and mastering, I don't really care for it. Editing, don't really care for it. I've forced myself to learn how to use it in those ways in case I ever have to, but there are other tools that I prefer to use for those. Not saying there's anything wrong with Logic. If you are using Logic Pro in those ways, continue to do so. But for me personally, I don't really like using Logic for mixing and mastering and for editing of audio or WAV files. Just don't like that. Okay, so I do all of my production here in Logic. You can see here I have a session up. I've got some MIDI happening in here. I've got some audio files in here. And so then let's say that I've done all the tracking that I'm going to do. And now I am ready to move from pre-production and production into post-production, which includes mixing and mastering. All right. What I end up doing is exporting everything out of Logic. I'll do some tutorials to show you how to do that. And I send it out of Logic. It used to, like I said, go then over into Pro Tools, but now I'm using this glorious application, Luna. All right. So here, this is the exact same session or the same song, but now I've got everything over here in Luna to prepare for mixing and any editing that I'm going to do. Now, there are a few reasons why I like to do that. One of the reasons is I don't want to keep my music in MIDI form. Years from now, I might go to a completely different computer, a completely different system, and I might not have maybe a particular instrument that I had. Let's say one day I decide to move on from Logic. I don't see that ever happening, but let's say one day I decide, something else catches my attention and, I think I want to use that now. Having everything over here in MIDI would create issues because a lot of the specific sounds and things that I'm using are coming from Logic, right? And if I want to be able to have those same sounds for eternity for that particular song, I'm not going to be able to do that by keeping my stuff in MIDI format. I need to export it to an audio format. So then at that point, the sound is locked, it's saved. Doesn't matter if I have that plugin or that instrument or anything like that anymore. It's there for all eternity. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why I do that. So here I am, I'm over in Luna. So I use Luna for editing, first of all. Okay. And the reason I use Luna for editing is because the tools in Luna are pretty much identical to the editing tools in Pro Tools, which I like better than the editing tools in Logic. There are just some things you can do that Logic does not allow you to do, or you have to do it a different way. I prefer the way that Luna does editing. Also, I'm going to use Luna for mixing and for mastering. So here I haven't started mixing this yet, but I've got my mix session all pulled up here. Here is my mixer view, got all my buses in place that I'm going to be using for this particular song. I have my effect buses here, got my mix bus all set up. I have everything color coded, and I actually have a rough mix going on in here, ready to go and get into creating a final mix. Okay. And I absolutely love it. Right. And so I'm going to be in Luna all the way through to if I am mastering. Most often, I don't like to master my own stuff. I like to get a different set of ears on it just to kind of keep me honest. And it's good to have another flavor on your stuff. So oftentimes I'll send it out to a mastering engineer to master stuff. But in some cases, I end up doing the mastering. Like for this particular song, I'm going to be doing the mastering most likely myself for this. And so I'll be in Luna all the way through for that. All right. So that's my process from beginning to end. I'm going to start out in OneNote, have my ideas, my rough ideas, lyrics, and all that stuff. I'm going to progress from OneNote to Logic Pro X, where I'm going to do all of my MIDI production, all of my tracking of instruments and vocals. I'm going to then export all of those things and jump over here to Luna, where I do my mixing and mastering and editing, first of all. And another reason why I like to have a different thing, because again, Luna can do MIDI stuff, right? I could do MIDI production and such in Luna. I can do mixing and mastering in Logic if I wanted to. But another reason why I like to have different environments is it puts me in a different headspace. Because I do everything from inception all the way through to completion, I like the fact that I know that if I'm in Logic, just the look of it, the feel of it, everything of it puts me in a mental space of, okay, Ed, you're producing music. So I'm in producer mode when I'm in Logic. And then when I'm over here in Luna, the look of it, the feel of it, everything I'm doing puts me in, okay, I'm in post-production mode now, right? So Ed, you're mixing, you're mastering, you're editing. And I like to do that. It kind of helps me to compartmentalize the things that I'm doing, and it puts me in the right headspace for whatever it is that I'm doing at that moment. Okay, so that's my real rough workflow in a nutshell. Now, I want to at some point get down into some of the other specific tools that I'm using in these different DAWs, some of the specific instruments and patches that I'm using in Logic, some of the specific plugins I'm using in Logic, and also in Luna to do the things that I'm doing. I want to get down into the specific templates that I use to start me off in Logic, to start me off in Luna. We'll get into all that in future videos. But what I want you to do now is just kind of think about what your workflow is. And what are some ways that maybe you could improve your workflow? What are some ways that you could maybe be doing things differently? If you have questions or if you want to share your workflow with me and kind of see my thoughts on it and what have you, feel free to leave comments down in the comment section. If you just want to share what your workflow is and just have a discussion, maybe there's some things I'm doing that you're like, well, Ed, how come? Why are you using that for that? If you have questions and stuff, feel free to ask in the comment section, and I'll reply as quickly as I can and talk about those things. But never, never, never be afraid to test out different things in your workflow, to challenge and to change what it is that you're doing, to look at new stuff, look at new plugins, look at new DAWs, look at new things. And you never know. You might find out that there's a better way to do things than you're currently doing them, or a more efficient way for you. And again, however you are doing things is fine, because the consumers, they don't care. When they're listening to that song and it's great and they love it, they're not gonna be like, man, this song is nice, but they didn't use Pro Tools, so I'm gonna cancel them. Man, this song is dope, but man, they used FL Studio, so I can't rock with them. They don't care. Right? All they care about is the final product. So whatever tools allow you to get from point A to point B and have it be a final quality industry standard product that you want the consumers to hear, that's what you should do, and that's what you should use. All right, so I'll be back later. Like I said, we're going to talk about some more specifics and get down into some tutorials and a bunch of other things with all these DAWs. We'll get down to that later on, all right? Talk to you guys soon.